with the Tao Sect disciples' low growls echoing through the rocky terrain. A sudden, intense air of bloodshed spread across the battlefield. Countless gazes turned toward the Tao Sect disciples, and instead of fear toward their impending clash with the Yuan Sect, their faces were filled with madness. Beneath that madness surged an irrepressible hatred. From a distance, Yuan Cang watched the fierce momentum of the Tao Sect disciples, his lips curling into a mocking smile. With a cold, indifferent wave of his hand, he ordered, "Attack!" Boom! As his command fell, the oppressive wave of primordial energy erupted from the Yuan Sect disciples behind him. Their gazes, filled with malice, locked onto their foes ahead. Behind Yuan Cang, 6 spirit generals from Yuan Sect burst forth, followed by a tide of disciples surging like a flood. Kill! Qing Ye's eyes turned bloodshot as he glared at the oncoming tide of Yuan Sect disciples. With a low growl from his throat, he was the first to rush forward. Boom! As the disciples from both sides charged, the tense atmosphere shattered. The sounds of slaughter filled the air, accompanied by the intense killing intent rising to the heavens. Countless spectators watched the two tidal forces collide, their expressions heavy with tension. In the next moment, the forces clashed violently, filling the battlefield with the thunderous noise of combat. Bang! At the moment of impact, the overwhelming killing intent spread like wildfire. The mighty waves of primordial energy swept across the battlefield as fierce martial techniques were unleashed without restraint, aimed ruthlessly at the enemies in front of them. There was no room for mercy now. Each strike was a brutal, bloody exchange of life and death. Yuan Cang and his 2 companions looked on coldly at the crashing tides of battle. Stepping forward, the swirling forces around them parted as if pushed away by an invisible hand. Phew! From a distance, Chen Kuei, EngSubs, and Wang Yin took deep breaths. Their bodies transformed into streaks of light as they shot toward Yuan Cang and his companions. Can you handle Chen Kuei? There are plenty of people who believe even you can't defeat him, Ling Zhen teased Yuan Cang with a playful smile. After today, no one will think that again, Yuan Cang responded calmly. Then leave Wang Yin to me. This time, I won't let him escape, Lei Qian growled, his eyes fixed on Wang Yin with murderous intent. In that case, I'll take care of EngSubs. Such a shame though. Destroying such a beautiful flower is truly a pity, Ling Zhen said with a smile, casually twirling his folding fan. Less talking, more action. Finish this quickly, Yuan Cang ordered with a slight frown before darting forward like a streak of light, blocking Chen Kuei's path. Simultaneously, Ling Zhen and Lei Qian also moved, intercepting EngSubs and Wang Yin. Wang Yin, let's see how you dare to act arrogant in front of me after this. Lei Qian's face twisted into a cruel grin as he blocked Wang Yan's path. Wang Yan's eyes were cold as he tightened his grip on his heavy black sword. In the blink of an eye, his figure blurred, and a streak of sharp sword energy pierced toward Lei Qian's throat like a bolt of lightning. Humph! Lei Qian snorted coldly. With a swift motion, a silver thunderblade appeared in his hand. Instead of dodging, he stepped forward, swinging the blade in a powerful arc to meet Wang Yan's attack head-on. Clang! The crisp clash of metal rang out, accompanied by sparks and a surge of violent energy as the two warriors engaged in a fierce life-or-death battle. Heh! Such impatience! Ling Zhen chuckled as he watched the others immediately go for the kill. Turning his attention to EngSubs, he greeted her with a courteous smile. I've long heard of Tao Sect's senior sister EngSubs. Today. Whoosh! Before he could finish, EngSubs charged forward with her 3-foot-long sword in hand. Its sharp blade aimed directly at Ling Zhen's vital points without any hesitation. Well, aren't you even more impatient? Ling Zhen's smile turned cold as his folding fan spun and expanded, transforming into a large shield that blocked her ferocious sword strikes. In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless, Ling Zhen said with narrowed eyes, his fan twirling as it sent out bursts of fierce energy aimed straight at EngSubs. EngSubs's gaze sharpened. With her primordial energy circulating at its peak, she met his attack head-on. While battles raged all around, at the center of the battlefield, two figures stood just 10 paces apart, locked in an intense standoff. An astonishing energy radiated from their bodies, far surpassing that of anyone else present. These two were, of course, Chen Kuei and Yuan Cang. The eyes of the crowd pierced through the chaos of battle, focusing on these two individuals. Their reputations were legendary among the younger generation in the Eastern Mystery region. One was the top-ranked fugitive on the Sect bounty list, while the other was the leader of the 3 minor kings from Yuan Sect. Both were prodigies with extraordinary talents and overwhelming strength, said to have reached the minor completion of the life mystique stage. At such a level, they were considered top-tier experts, even among the older generation. Speculation about who was stronger had been rampant for years. The two had clashed before, but neither had fought with their full strength, resulting in an inconclusive outcome. Now, however, the anticipation was palpable. Everyone wanted to see which of these famed prodigies would emerge victorious. You shouldn't meddle in the affairs between Yuan Sect and Dao Sect, Yuan Cang said, his gaze fixed on Chen Kuei. He cast a glance at the flames of battle around them, but made no immediate move, speaking with cold indifference. Heh, I don't need your permission for what I choose to do, Chen Kuei replied with a light smile. His ghostly mask added to his ominous appearance. As the top-ranked fugitive in the Eastern Mystery region, he wasn't intimidated by Yuan Cang's reputation. Yuan Cang's eyes narrowed as coldness seeped into his expression. Our brief encounter back then left me unsatisfied. Since we've met today, let's finish what we started. I'm happy to oblige, Chen Kuei responded. Yuan Cang's lips curled into a faint smile. Slowly spreading his arms, waves of terrifying primordial energy surged from his body like a tidal wave, the rumbling sound echoing across the sky. Chen Kuei's eyes flickered. In response, the sky darkened as waves of eerie black-gray energy poured from his body, forming a dense, oppressive fog. Both Chen Kuei and Yuan Cang had reached the minor completion of the life mystique stage, making their control over primordial energy vastly superior to that of the other disciples. Trust me, you'll regret the decision you've made, Yuan Cang said as he slowly gripped the handle of a simple black iron sword that materialized in his hand. His eyes gleamed with a strange light as he fixed his gaze on Chen Kuei. It's too early to say that now, Chen Kuei replied with a calm smile. He too gripped a large black sawtooth blade, etched with ghostly patterns. Raising the blade, he pointed it directly at Yuan Cang. Let's begin. Show me the extent of your strength as the leader of the 3 minor kings, little Yuan King. Yuan Cang's lips curled into a cold smile. In the blink of an eye, his body became a blur, transforming into a streak of light as he rushed forward. The immense surge of primordial energy around him roared like a storm. An intense clash erupted instantly. Violent waves of energy swept across the battlefield. The thick scent of blood filled the air, mixed with a chilling, killing intent. The sky above seemed to darken, taking on a blood-red hue. In the vast expanse of the rocky battlefield, chaos reigned. The two forces collided with no room for words. Only the sound of martial techniques being unleashed as bloodshot eyes focused on the enemy before them. The brutality of the battle could only be described as savage. Boom. In the center of the battlefield, a dense red light rose. Huan sat cross-legged within a glowing orb of energy, her heavenly phoenix zither resting on her lap. Her slender, flawless hands glowed faintly as they touched the strings. Before her stood 2 spirit generals from Yuan Sect, both smirking coldly. Their strength had reached the 9th nirvana stage, and within mere minutes, they had severely injured more than a dozen Dao Sect disciples. Finish her, one of the spirit generals said, locking his gaze on Huan. The two exchanged a glance before charging forward in perfect sync. Huan's usual lively and playful demeanor was replaced by an icy resolve. Her large eyes, fixed on the incoming spirit generals, gleamed with a cold, blue light. Boom. Her delicate fingers plucked the zither strings, and instantly, a melodic sound rang out. 2 crimson sound waves shot forward with terrifying speed, crashing into the approaching spirit generals. Bang! The sound waves exploded on impact, sending the 2 spirit generals stumbling back in disarray. When they steadied themselves, their expressions had grown far more serious. EngHuan had recently broken through to the 9th Nirvana stage, and with the power of her heavenly phoenix zither, she could single-handedly hold back 2 spirit generals from Yuan Sect. You'll repay the debt for harming Dao Sect disciples right here, right now? EngHuan's face was shrouded in frost as she coldly eyed the startled spirit generals. Her hands swiftly moved across the strings again, releasing waves of crimson light and clear sound that surged toward the two like a relentless storm. There are still 4 other spirit generals from Yuan Sect, Qingyi said, his gaze turning somber as he glanced at the battle around EngHuan. His eyes then shifted toward the other 4 directions, where Yuan Sect disciples, led by the remaining spirit generals, were fiercely advancing. I'll take one, said Muli, the senior brother from Hong Hall. His strength was also enough to contend with someone at the 9th Nirvana stage. Though he might not be able to defeat his opponent, he was confident he could at least hold them off. I'll handle another, Qingyi said through gritted teeth. He, too, had recently passed through the Nirvana tribulation and entered the 9th Nirvana stage, which allowed him to be on par with the spirit general. However, he lacked the assistance of a pure primordial treasure, putting him at a slight disadvantage. But what about the other 2? Muli asked, frowning. Spirit generals at the 9th Nirvana stage were no easy opponents, and leaving them unchecked could severely damage their morale. As Qingye's brow furrowed with frustration, a clear voice suddenly rang out from the side. I'll take the last 2. Turning, Qingyi and Muli were surprised to see a slender young girl dressed in a dark black gown. She held an enormous, oddly shaped black scythe in her hand. It was none other than Qingtan. You. Qingyi stared at her in disbelief. I'll handle those 2 spirit generals, Qingtan said once more, gripping the black scythe tightly. Are you sure you can do it? Qingyi asked, unable to hide his concern. He worried that Qingtan was being too reckless, and if something went wrong. Qingtan gave him a brief look without responding, and suddenly, a surge of intense, dark energy burst from her body. The black light enveloped her, and even the air around her seemed to freeze in place. What a terrifyingly sinister energy! Qingyi and Muli were stunned as they gazed at the black light surrounding Qingtan. Her primordial energy was different from theirs. It was pure, unadulterated darkness, unlike the balanced mix of yin and yang they had cultivated. I'm going, Qingtan said calmly. Without further hesitation, her body transformed into a streak of black light. Her scythe danced through the air, sending out waves of icy darkness toward the 2 spirit generals. Where did this brat come from? She's courting death. One of the spirit generals sneered. Without missing a beat, both of them leaped forward like leopards, their fierce palm strikes aiming directly at Qingtan. Swish, swish. Unfazed by their attack, Qingtan didn't retreat. The eerie light of her scythe glinted dangerously as she slashed out. Rip. The blade cut through the air, and to everyone's shock, the space before them seemed to tear apart. In the blink of an eye, the scythe appeared above one of the spirit generals' heads, as if it had pierced through space itself. Clang. At the last moment, a sword light shot out from the side, narrowly blocking the scythe's deadly strike. The spirit general stumbled backward in a panic, but not before the scythe had taken a chunk of flesh from his scalp. Blood flowed down his face. Be careful. There's something strange about her scythe, the other spirit general warned, his eyes narrowing in fear. Qingtan glanced at the 2 men but didn't waste words. Once again, she slashed out with her scythe, sending a fierce gust of dark energy toward them. The spirit generals quickly gathered their strength, no longer daring to underestimate her as they prepared to face her full power. Let's join the fight as well, Qingyi said to Muli as they watched Qingtan hold off the 2 spirit generals. Exchanging a relieved glance, they immediately charged into the battlefield to engage the last 2 spirit generals from Yuan Sect. Boom, boom. The sounds of slaughter filled the air above the rocky battlefield. Everywhere one looked, there were bloodshot eyes locked in life and death struggles. From time to time, people were struck down, spewing blood as they were sent flying to the outskirts of the battlefield, their fate uncertain. Neither side showed any mercy. This wasn't some friendly competition. It was a true battle between sworn enemies. On a distant peak, a large group of disciples from the Nine Heavens Taiching Palace stood watching the scene before them, their faces solemn as they gazed at the life-and-death combat. The blood-red light of the battlefield reflected in their eyes. They're really fighting to the death? The grudge between Dao Sect and Yuan Sect truly runs deep, someone in the crowd murmured. Every time the sects met in battle, Dao Sect and Yuan Sect disciples would clash like mortal enemies, as if they had sworn blood vengeance against one another. The Yuan Sect disciples are overall stronger. Dao Sect fighting them head-on like this doesn't seem wise. Wu Kun, one of the disciples, remarked with a serious expression as he watched the blood-soaked battlefield. Yeah, and Lin Dong from Dao Sect is nowhere to be seen. Could he really be afraid of Yuan Cang and not dare to show up? Another person chimed in. Lin Dong would never fear Yuan Cang, someone immediately retorted. The person turned to see an angry Su Ro, who glared at him, silencing him with a dry chuckle. Su Ro's gaze shifted to the battlefield below, where the fighting was becoming increasingly brutal. Dao Sect disciples were beginning to suffer more and more casualties. The painful screams echoed clearly in Su Ro's ears, reminding her that this was no training drill. It was a real battlefield. The key to this battle lies in the fight between Chen Kuei and Yuan Cang, Wu Kun said as he looked toward the sky above. There, waves of violent primordial energy surged madly as two ghost-like figures clashed with blinding speed. Each collision sent deep, thunderous booms through the air. Senior brother Wu Kun, who do you think has the upper hand? One of the disciples asked. Wu Kun hesitated before replying. Qing Zhu once said that Yuan Cang is extremely dangerous. Even she has a hard time defeating him. Although Chen Kuei's reputation is strong, I think Yuan Cang has the advantage. Su Ro, overhearing this, felt her heart tighten. Her fists clenched as she cast an anxious glance toward the distant sky. She knew that if Chen Kuei fell to Yuan Cang, Dao Sect would be utterly defeated. Lin Dong, hurry back. Far from the battlefield, two streaks of light shot through the sky at incredible speed, the sonic booms from their passage drawing the attention of those below. Lin Dong's face was tense as he looked ahead toward the distant sky, where the scent of blood seemed to fill the air. Senior Sister Xiao Xiao, everyone, please wait for me. Lin Dong clenched his fists, and the azure dragon wings on his back flapped, pushing his speed to the absolute limit. In the distant sky, waves of immense primordial energy surged as two figures, both surrounded by violent power, clashed in mid-air. The watching crowd gasped as the two forces collided with a deafening roar. Boom! At the moment of impact, it was as if thunder from the nine heavens erupted. Visible ripples of primordial energy spread through the sky as the two figures were thrown back, their feet skidding across the air before they regained their balance. Yuan Cang waved his sleeve, dispersing the residual energy from his body. His gaze fell on Chen Kuei, and he smiled faintly. It's been a while since we fought, and you've made quite a bit of progress. The same goes for you, Chen Kuei responded coldly, as gray-black energy swirled ominously in his palm. He gave Yuan Cang a calm glance before adding, it seems Dao Sect's disciples aren't a match for Yuan Sect's after all. Yuan Cang's eyes gleamed with amusement as he glanced at the battlefield below, where the tide of battle clearly favored Yuan Sect. Chen Kuei frowned slightly and cast a worried look in Qing Tan's direction. Seeing her facing two ninth Nirvana stage experts on her own, a trace of concern flickered in his eyes. While he knew of her unique abilities, if anything happened to her here, he'd surely face his master's wrath. It seems. I'll have to defeat you first, Chen Kuei said, his eyes flashing with resolve. If he could defeat Yuan Cang, Yuan Sect's morale would surely plummet. You really think you can do that? Yuan Cang's lips curled into a playful smile. Chen Kuei didn't respond. Instead, he slowly rolled up his sleeves, revealing strange black streaks seeping from beneath his skin. Within moments, his arms turned pitch black, and his fingers grew sharp, glinting with a dark, eerie light. A bone-chilling aura began to emanate from him. Seeing this, Yuan Cang narrowed his eyes, the coldness in his gaze growing more intense. Bang! Pang Tong's face twisted in a ferocious expression as he unleashed a punch brimming with powerful primordial energy. His fist slammed into the chest of a Yuan Sect disciple, the force caving in the man's chest. Blood spurted from his mouth as his body crumpled to the ground. "Brother Pang, watch out!" Just as Pang Tong killed his opponent, a warning shout came from behind him. His heart tightened, and he instinctively shifted his body to the left. Swish! A sharp sword light sliced across Pang Tong's arm, cutting a deep wound down to the bone. Blood immediately gushed out. Whoosh! The blade missed its mark, but the Yuan Sect disciple who had launched the attack didn't hesitate. He stepped forward like a predator, his sword poised to strike at Pang Tong's throat. Clang! Clang! Before the sword could reach Pang Tong, another figure stepped forward from behind him. With a swift motion, a large blade deflected the sword light, forcing the Yuan Sect disciple back with a powerful gust of wind. "Brother Pang, are you all right?" Jiang Hao asked, standing back-to-back with Pang Tong as he wiped the blood from his face. "I'm fine. Thanks," Pang Tong said, shaking his head. He channeled his primordial energy to stop the bleeding from his arm, but his gaze swept over the battlefield, his expression darkening. By now, the difference in strength between the two sides was becoming evident, and some Dao Sect disciples were already showing signs of exhaustion. "The situation doesn't look good," Jiang Hao said grimly. Even the stronger disciples like them were injured, so it was likely that the others were faring much worse. Pang Tong nodded, knowing that both sides were now too deep into the battle to retreat. There was no turning back. If Lindong doesn't arrive soon, we won't be able to hold out. Senior sister Xiao Xiao and senior brother Wang Yin can barely hold off Ling Zhan and Lei Qian. Jiang Hao said anxiously. "Stop talking. Lindong will come," Pang Tong snapped. Just as he prepared to rejoin the fight, his expression suddenly changed. He looked up at the sky, where an immense wave of energy was gathering. The overwhelming surge of energy immediately drew countless eyes to the battlefield. There, amidst the rolling waves of gray-black primordial energy, Chen Kuei's dark arms radiated an ominous black light. What terrifying power! Chen Kuei is going to use his finishing move. Both of them are aiming to defeat each other as quickly as possible, but Yuan Cang is no easy opponent. The gazes of the entire battlefield converged on the sky above, knowing full well that the outcome of this duel would decide the battle's victor. Whether Chen Kuei or Yuan Cang fell, the morale of their respective sides would suffer a massive blow. Boom! Boom! The sky roared as black light gathered behind Chen Kuei. His eyes sharpened with resolve as he stepped forward, his hand curling into a claw, which he extended toward Yuan Cang from a distance. Great dark, heavenly ghost claw. At the same time, his deep voice echoed across the battlefield, and from the sky above, countless ghostly howls resounded. The boundless gray-black energy condensed into a massive ghostly claw, nearly 100 meters in size, with fierce winds howling around it. Bang! The ghost claw tore through the sky, carrying an incredibly sinister force as it charged toward Yuan Cang. "Haha, is this your prized martial art, Chen Kuei? Very well. Today, I'll dismantle it right before everyone's eyes." Yuan Cang looked at the incoming ghost claw without a hint of fear. Instead, he laughed heartily as a massive surge of primordial energy erupted behind him, roaring like a tidal wave. Primordial Emperor Codex, Hand of Heavenly Origin. Yuan Cang shouted as he extended his hand and clenched it into a fist. Rumble. Behind him, the colossal surge of primordial energy gathered into a massive hand, hundreds of meters tall, exuding a terrifying power capable of shaking the heavens and earth. Boom! The immense hand of energy, as wide as the sky itself, swatted forward. In the blink of an eye, it collided with the dark ghost claw in full view of the countless eyes watching. Bang! 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 The moment they clashed, thunderous explosions echoed across the battlefield. The ghost claw and the giant hand unleashed violent energy waves, each attempting to crush the other. However, their powers were evenly matched, and despite the furious intensity of their clash, neither side could gain the upper hand. "They're evenly matched," the onlookers murmured as they watched the stalemate in the sky. As if hearing the murmurs, Yuan Cang's eyes glinted with a cold sneer. A strange, sinister smile spread across his face. Chen Kuei, I told you you'll regret this. Yuan Cang gazed at Chen Kuei from afar, his smile growing darker. Suddenly, he formed a series of complex hand seals. As the seals fell into place, a mysterious sigil flickered into existence on Yuan Cang's forehead. A faint but unmistakable spirit seal. A spirit seal? Chen Kuei's eyes widened in shock. His face paled as a ripple of disbelief spread across his features. He had never expected Yuan Cang to possess a spirit seal as well. Noticed it, have you? Yuan Cang's cruel smile deepened as the sigil on his forehead began to glow. In response, his energy surged dramatically, his power escalating to terrifying levels. Boom, boom. With Yuan Cang's sudden increase in power, the giant hand of energy behind him also swelled in size. It clamped down on the ghost claw with overwhelming force, and cracks immediately began to appear on the dark ghost claw. Shatter! Yuan Cang shouted. A crisp sound echoed through the sky as the ghost claw was crushed into pieces. Ugh! Chen Kuei groaned, a trace of blood draining from his face as he felt the backlash of his shattered attack. I gave you a chance to live, but since you didn't take it, don't blame me for being ruthless. Yuan Cang's eyes glinted with malice as he took a step forward. The enormous hand of primordial energy ripped through the sky and shot toward Chen Kuei with deadly force. The enormous shadow engulfed Chen Kuei's retreat, and before he could react, the massive hand smashed into his body. Boom! The dull thud echoed across the battlefield, making the hearts of all who heard it skip a beat. A streak of black light shot down from the sky and crashed into the ground, creating a massive crater. Inside the crater lay Chen Kuei, his face pale and his body riddled with wounds, blood trickling down his skin. Yuan Cang's gaze was icy as he looked down at the severely injured Chen Kuei. He sneered and raised his hand. A black iron sword appeared in his grip, and with a wave, a sharp beam of sword energy shot toward Chen Kuei's head, clearly aiming to finish him off. Boom! Just as the sword energy was about to reach Chen Kuei, a sudden zither sound rang out. A crimson sound wave shot in from afar, intercepting the sword beam and stopping it in its tracks. Huh! Yuan Cang's eyes narrowed as he glanced toward the source of the interference. There, a young girl holding a crimson ancient zither was staring at him coldly. Below her lay two Yuan Sect spirit generals, defeated. Even with their combined strength, they had fallen to Huan and her heavenly phoenix zither. Having reached the 9th nirvana stage, she was far stronger than before. A pure primordial treasure, huh? Yuan Cang glanced at the zither in her hands, sneering. Do you think that alone will allow you to face me? Huan rose into the air, her eyes glinting with determination as she glanced at the heavily injured Chen Kuei. She bit her lip, her eyes flickering with blue light, and then she sat cross-legged in midair, clearly preparing to intervene. Haha, is Dao Sect so weak now that it has to rely on a little girl to face me? Yuan Cang mocked, shaking his head in disdain. And me. Before Yuan Cang's voice had fully faded, a cold voice rang out. Moments later, another figure shot forward. Dressed in a dark gown and wielding a massive black scythe, Qing Tian appeared beside Huan. She too had defeated two spirit generals from Yuan Sect. Though both girls were young, their accomplishments were nothing short of extraordinary. Another pure primordial treasure? Yuan Cang's eyes narrowed as he glanced at Qing Tian, his gaze sharpening when it fell on her black scythe. The entire battlefield was stunned as countless eyes gazed at the two young girls standing against Yuan Cang. No one had expected that it would be these two flower-like girls who would step up to stop him. The tense atmosphere paused for a moment, and even many Dao Sect disciples stared in shock before worry and concern filled their hearts. Why is senior sister Huan stepping in? How can they possibly stop Yuan Cang? The Dao Sect disciples were filled with anxiety. Huan was beloved among them for her lively and cheerful personality, and now, seeing her stand up to face Yuan Cang brought a surge of anger to their hearts, not at her, but at the relentless aggression of Yuan Sect. Damn it! Qing Yi forced back the Yuan Sect spirit general in front of him with a powerful strike. His face darkened as he looked up at the scene in the sky. His fists clenched so tightly they creaked. The fact that a young girl had to step forward in such a critical moment was a heavy blow to their pride as men. You should worry about yourself, the Yuan Sect spirit general sneered, charging toward Qing Yi with a fierce palm strike. I'll kill you. Qing Ye's eyes flashed red with madness. His usual calm demeanor was cast aside as his overwhelming primordial energy surged, and he retaliated wildly against his opponent. His desperate and ferocious style of combat caught the Yuan Sect spirit general off guard, forcing him into a momentary state of disarray. This kind of outburst from Qing Yi wasn't an isolated incident. Across the battlefield, many Dao Sect disciples were pushed to the brink, their eyes bloodshot and their fighting becoming increasingly crazed. When had they, Dao Sect disciples, fallen to such a state where they needed a girl to stand between them and a powerful enemy? Would the tragic events of the previous tournament repeat themselves? No. The thought roared in the hearts of the Dao Sect disciples. Spurred by this fury, they suddenly erupted with renewed energy. Their attacks, which had been growing weaker, became increasingly fierce and savage, shocking the Yuan Sect disciples with their sudden ferocity. The sudden surge in morale caught the Yuan Sect disciples off guard, causing the battlefield to momentarily spiral out of control. So this is how they boost their morale? Not bad, but the price may be too steep. Yuan Cang observed the battlefield below with a cold smile. His gaze shifted back to EngHuanHuan and Qing Tan, who were standing resolutely in front of him. EngHuanHuan's cold eyes met Yuan Cang's as she glanced down at the battlefield, her heart aching as she saw the growing casualties among the Dao Sect disciples. Her eyes reddened slightly with emotion. For a girl experiencing her first life-and-death battle, the scene before her was nothing short of brutal. "I won't let you pass," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly as her delicate hands rested on the strings of the heavenly phoenix zither. She knew that if Yuan Cang managed to enter the battlefield, the Dao Sect would face utter defeat, and the losses would be catastrophic. "Foolish girl," Yuan Cang sneered. "I don't have the slightest bit of sympathy for you. Since you've dared to stand in my way, you'll bear the consequences." "You're the foolish one." Qing Tan's eyes narrowed, and her hand tightened around her black scythe. With a swift motion, she slashed down, and the air around her twisted as the blade sliced through space. A sharp arc of cold light heading straight for Yuan Cang's head. As the blade neared, Yuan Cang stepped back just in time, narrowly dodging the strike. "So, this scythe can bypass distance and strike directly. How strange," Yuan Cang muttered as he glanced at Qing Tan's weapon. Her attack was indeed tricky, but it was a shame that she lacked the strength to make it truly threatening. Otherwise, even he would have had some difficulty. "Huan, let's attack together," Qing Tan said, her face turning serious after seeing her attack dodged. "All right," EngHuanHuan nodded. She knew how powerful Yuan Cang was, and if not for the pure primordial treasures they wielded, it would have been impossible for them to even challenge him. Boom! EngHuanHuan's slender fingers plucked the strings of the heavenly phoenix zither, and immediately, blood seeped from her palm onto the strings, staining them crimson. The red light emitted by the zither grew even more intense. "Huan, your hands are so beautiful," Qing Tan remarked with a touch of envy, glancing at EngHuanHuan's flawless hands as they played the zither. EngHuanHuan remained silent, astonished that Qing Tan had the presence of mind to comment on her hands in such a tense moment. "Hee," Qing Tan giggled mischievously at EngHuanHuan's expression, but she quickly refocused and leaped forward, her body surrounded by a surge of sinister primordial energy. "I'll keep him occupied. You attack from a distance," Qing Tan called out as she lunged at Yuan Cang, her black scythe slashing through the air. Although she was still some distance away from Yuan Cang, the blade's sharp energy ignored the space between them, striking toward him. Humph! Though Yuan Cang had initially been caught off guard by Qing Tan's unusual attacks, his superior strength soon allowed him to steady himself. The iron sword in his hand hummed with power, and with a sweep, he shattered the incoming scythe energy with ease. Screech! As Qing Tan launched her assault, EngHuanHuan took a deep breath. Her large eyes flickered with an icy blue light as her fingers danced across the zither strings. A moment later, the clear cry of a phoenix echoed across the sky. Boom! A torrent of crimson light erupted from the heavenly phoenix zither, and the phoenix pattern engraved on it detached, growing rapidly until a massive crimson phoenix, hundreds of meters tall, hovered above EngSubs. Its presence radiated an overwhelming energy. Swish! Swish! The phoenix spread its wings and, with a powerful flap, unleashed countless crimson feathers that shot toward Yuan Cang like a torrential rain of light. Himph! Yuan Cang scoffed. He waved his sleeve, and a massive wall of primordial energy materialized in front of him, shielding him from the oncoming barrage of feathers. Bang! 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 Explosions erupted as the crimson feathers struck the energy barrier, causing cracks to spread across its surface. Despite Yuan Cang's formidable defense, the barrier was forcibly shattered, revealing the destructive power of the pure primordial treasure. Yuan Cang's eyes narrowed as he watched his barrier collapse. His iron sword flickered, and beams of sword energy shot out, destroying the remaining feathers before they could reach him. Using a pure primordial treasure drains a great deal of energy. I'd like to see how long you two, who haven't even reached the life mystique stage, can hold out. Yuan Cang sneered. EngSubs and Qingtan exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with determination. They knew Yuan Cang was right. Wielding pure primordial treasures came with a steep cost, and they wouldn't be able to keep this up for long. Their only option was to go all out and hope to end the battle quickly. EngSubs' delicate fingers gently plucked the strings of the zither, and a soft melody filled the sky. As the music played, the crimson phoenix above her glowed even brighter, and the light slowly condensed into a radiant ring that enveloped the phoenix. A terrifying surge of energy erupted from the crimson sphere that EngSubs had summoned. The temperature of the entire battlefield seemed to spike as the heat radiated through the air. Swish! While EngSubs was gathering her killing move, Qingtan's expression also grew serious. She released the black scythe from her grip, allowing it to hover in the air. With a precise motion of her jade-like hand, a drop of crimson blood shot from her fingertip and landed on the blade of the scythe. Immediately, the dark blade began to glow with faint red light, and an incredibly sharp energy quietly emanated from it. After completing this action, Qingtan didn't stop. After a brief hesitation, she swiftly formed a complex series of hand seals. Black light began to gather at her forehead, and moments later, an ancient black rune slowly emerged from her mud pill palace. The moment this black rune appeared, the entire sky darkened. Waves of ominous black energy surged out from it, flooding the battlefield. What is that? From a distance, Yuan Cang's eyes narrowed as he focused on the black rune. His pupils shrank in shock. The dark ancestral talisman?